The alarm screamed through the silent corridors of Kepler 7 station, and Dr. Telix felt his forearms trembling as he rushed to the communications console. His thin gray skin had turned almost white with fear. Through the viewport he could see them, 12 dark ships moving like hungry insects toward his small research station. The Kresh pirates had found them. "All stations, this is an emergency." Telix spoke into the transmitter, his voice shaking despite his best efforts to stay calm. "This is Kepler 7 scientific outpost. We are under attack. Our coordinates are..." He rattled off the numbers quickly, his secondary hands already working to boost the signal strength. "We have 47 crew members. Minimal defensive capabilities. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need immediate assistance." Around him, the other scientists moved in panic. Young Mira, barely into her second decade, clutched a datapad to her chest like it might protect her. Old Corthan tried to activate the station's defensive shields, but everyone knew they were designed to stop radiation, not weapons fire. The first impact hit the station, and the whole structure shuddered. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in angry red. "How long until coalition forces arrive?" someone asked. Telix checked the computer, his heart sinking. 5 days. Maybe 6. "We don't have 6 hours." Mira cried out. She was right. Telix could see it on the readouts. Life support would fail once the Kresh breached the outer hull. They would suffocate in the cold dark of space, or the pirates would simply vent the atmosphere and take whatever they wanted from the corpses floating in the wreckage. The Kresh were known for their cruelty. They did not take prisoners. They did not show mercy. Another impact rocked the station. Telix sent the distress call again, broadcasting on every frequency he could access. Someone had to hear them. Someone had to be close enough to help. 3 sectors away, Captain Sarah Chen sat in her command chair aboard the cargo vessel Indomitable Spirit, reviewing shipping manifests and trying not to fall asleep. The life of a freight hauler was not glamorous. They carried machine parts, processed food, and occasionally passengers who could not afford better transportation. Her crew of 23 humans had been in space for 6 weeks, and they still had another 3 weeks before reaching their destination. "Captain, I'm picking up something odd," said Marcus Webb, her chief engineer. He was a big man, built thick with muscle from years of manual labor in various space stations and ships. His fingers moved across his console with surprising delicacy. "It's a distress call. Automated translation says it's from a Vrin science station." Sarah sat up straighter, her exhaustion vanishing instantly. "How far?" 3 days at our current speed." Marcus paused, reading more data. "Coalition response time is estimated at 5 to 6 days. The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew what that meant. By the time official help arrived, everyone on that station would be dead. "What's our cargo situation?" Sarah asked. Her first officer, Lieutenant James Rodriguez, checked his screen. "Nothing perishable. Nothing time-sensitive. We could divert without breaching contract." Sarah stood up and walked to the viewport, staring out at the endless stars. She thought about the 47 people on that station. Scientists, probably. People who spent their lives studying the universe, trying to understand how things worked. They had done nothing to deserve this. They were just in the wrong place when the wrong people showed up. "Captain," Marcus said quietly, "it's Vrin. They'll be scared of us." He was right, of course. The Vrin were a peaceful species, fragile and gentle. They came from a low-gravity world with a thin atmosphere. To them, humans were monsters from a death planet. Earth's gravity alone would crush most Vrin in minutes. The diseases humans carried casually would kill them in hours. And human capacity for violence was legendary across the galaxy, even if most of it was exaggerated. "They sent a distress call to anyone who could hear," Sarah said slowly. "That includes us." "It's a 3-day journey at normal speeds," Rodriguez pointed out. "But if we push the engines, how fast can we get there?" Sarah interrupted. Marcus winced. "If we redline everything? Bypass the safety protocols? Maybe 31, 32 hours. But Captain, that's dangerous. Really dangerous. The slipstream maneuvers required. 2 ships tried that route this year. Both failed. Both crews died." Sarah turned to face her crew. They were all watching her, waiting for her decision. These were good people, every one of them. They had families waiting back on Earth. They had lives beyond this ship. She had no right to risk them for strangers who would probably fear them more than their attackers. "I won't order anyone to come," she said clearly. "This is volunteer only." Anyone who wants to stay behind can take the shuttle to the nearest station. No judgment. No consequences. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Finally, Marcus grinned. Captain, with all due respect, shut up and let me start overriding these safety systems. We've got a schedule to beat. Around the bridge, the crew returned to their stations. Sarah felt something warm expand in her chest. Pride, maybe. Or just love for these crazy, stubborn humans who would fly into danger for people they had never met. All right, she said. Marcus, get us moving. Rodriguez, send a response to that distress call. Rodriguez nodded and opened the channel. He spoke in the standard galactic language, his voice steady and strong. Kepler 7 station. This is the human vessel Indomitable Spirit. We have received your distress call. Help is coming. Hold on. On Kepler 7, Dr. Telex heard the response and felt his blood turn cold. Humans. The Deathworlders were coming. He did not know if he had just been saved or doomed them all. The Indomitable Spirit shook violently as Marcus pushed the engines beyond their design limits. Warning lights covered his console like angry red stars, each one screaming that something was about to break. He ignored them all. His hands moved quickly across the controls, rerouting power, bypassing safety systems that were designed to keep the ship from tearing itself apart. Engine temperature at 130%, called out Chen Li from engineering. Coolant system is barely keeping up. Keep it together, Marcus muttered, though he was not sure if he was talking to the ship or himself. Just a little longer, girl. In the cargo bay, other crew members were securing everything that might come loose. At the speeds they were traveling, even a loose tool could become a deadly projectile. Maria Santos, the ship's doctor, was preparing the medical bay for casualties. She knew the odds. This kind of flying killed people, even when everything went right. On the bridge, Captain Sarah Chen studied the navigation charts. The route Marcus had plotted was insane. They were using slipstream currents that most pilots avoided, taking shortcuts through regions of space where gravity did strange things. One miscalculation and they would be crushed by forces beyond imagination, or torn apart by tidal stresses, or simply lost forever in the dark. 28 hours to destination, Rodriguez announced. We're actually ahead of schedule. Sarah allowed herself a tiny smile. Humans were good at this, she thought. Good at pushing past limits that other species accepted as absolute. It came from living on Earth, where everything tried to kill you from the moment you were born. High gravity that crushed your bones and built them stronger. Diseases that forced your immune system to become a weapon. Predators that taught you to run faster, think quicker, fight harder. On Kepler 7 station, conditions were getting worse. The crash had breached the outer hull in 3 places. Telex and his team had sealed off those sections, but they were running out of station. 47 people crowded into spaces meant for 20. The air was getting thin and stale. The temperature had dropped to just above freezing. How long until coalition forces arrive? Mira asked again. She asked every hour now like a prayer. 4 days, Telex said quietly. He did not mention that they would all be dead in 2. Instead, he pulled up his datapad and accessed the galactic database. He searched for Earth, the human homeworld, the place these rescuers came from. What he found made his hands shake. Classification Class 12 Deathworld. The highest rating, a world so hostile that 14 different species had classified it as uninhabitable. Gravity 12.2% above galactic standard. Atmosphere containing 21% oxygen, which was poisonous to most species. Extreme temperature variations. Thousands of predatory species. Diseases that could jump between species. Natural disasters that could level entire cities. And humans had not just survived there. They had thrived. They had conquered their world and then reached for the stars. Telex read accounts from traders who had met humans. One Vryn merchant described watching a human lift cargo containers that required mechanical assistance for any other species. A Turian soldier reported seeing a human continue fighting after receiving wounds that would have killed any warrior of his race. A Quellan doctor had documented human immune systems, fighting off infections that would have been fatal to any other known species within hours. Tell me again who responded. To our distress call, Old Corthan said, standing beside Telex and reading over his shoulder. Humans, Telex whispered. Deathworlders. The word spread through the station like a cold wind. Deathworlders. Creatures from a nightmare world. The Vryn had stories about such beings, though most thought they were just tales to scare children. Monsters that could not be killed. predators that never stopped hunting. Beings without mercy or compassion. Maybe the creche will protect us, someone joked nervously, and no one laughed. Another impact shook the station. The creche were getting more aggressive, using heavier weapons. They knew the station's defenses were almost gone. They were preparing for the final assault. Young Mira approached Telex, her eyes wide with fear. "Doctor, when the humans arrive, will they hurt us?" Telex did not know what to say. He looked at the data on his screen, all the warnings and classifications and horror stories. Then he remembered the message they had received. "Help is coming, hold on." The voice had been rough and strange, speaking a language that sounded like rocks grinding together, but the words had been clear enough. "I don't know," he admitted, "but they are coming to help us." That has to mean something. The hours crawled past like wounded animals. The creche began cutting through the final defensive door. Telex could hear the screaming of metal as their tools worked. They had maybe 20 minutes left, maybe less. Then, impossibly, the station's external sensors detected something, a ship appearing out of slipstream space way too close to the station. Any sane pilot would have exited slipstream at least 1,000,000 kilometers away. But humans, Telex was learning, did not seem to care much about sanity. "Kepler-7, this is the human vessel Indomitable Spirit," the rough voice said over the communication channel. "We are here. Get everyone away from external bulkheads. Things are about to get loud." Telex stared at the sensor readings. 31 hours. The humans had made a 3-day journey in 31 hours. He quickly ordered everyone to the interior compartments, away from the outer walls. "What are they going to do?" Corthan asked. Through the viewport, Telex saw the answer. The human ship was not slowing down. It was accelerating directly toward the creche blockade, shields glowing bright with built-up energy. It was insane. It was impossible. It was the most human thing Telex could imagine. "They're going to ram them," he said in disbelief. The Indomitable Spirit, with engines screaming and hull protesting, smashed into the creche formation like a hammer made of fury and desperation. Telex watched as the human ship scattered the pirate vessels, its shields flaring brilliant white as weapons fire splashed against them. One creche ship tried to match the humans' maneuver and simply exploded from the stress. Sarah Chen's voice came over the channel again, calm despite the chaos. "Kepler-7, hold tight. We're coming in." Telex held tight. They all did. And they prayed to whatever gods might listen that they had not traded one death for another. The Indomitable Spirit did not dock with Kepler-7 station like a normal ship. It crashed through the creche blockade, shields screaming, hull plates glowing red from friction and weapons fire. 2 creche vessels tried to intercept and were batted aside like insects. The human ship was smaller than the pirate cruisers, but it moved with a reckless speed that bordered on suicidal. Inside the station, Telex and his crew felt the impact as the human ship finally made contact with their docking port. The whole structure rang like a bell. Emergency systems blared warnings about hull breach, but these were controlled breaches. Airlocks opening to allow the humans inside. "Stay back," Telex ordered his people, positioning himself at the front of their group. If these Deathworlders came to harm them, he would die first, giving his people a chance to run. Not that running would help much. The airlock door opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. 20 humans came through in formation, moving with a fluid coordination that spoke of training and practice. They wore what appeared to be maintenance suits, heavy and reinforced, but Telex recognized them for what they truly were. Armor designed to survive in environments that would kill most species instantly. Each human carried tools that could serve as weapons: plasma cutters, hydraulic pry bars, magnetic grapples. The first human through removed her helmet, and Telex found himself looking at Captain Sarah Chen. She was smaller than he had expected, barely taller than a Vryn, but she moved through the low gravity of the station with an ease that was almost frightening. Where Telex and his people floated and pushed off walls, the humans walked with magnetic boots, each step deliberate and controlled. "Dr. Telex?" Sarah asked, her translator rendering the words in proper Vryn. "We're here to help." "How many wounded?" Telex tried to speak but could not find words. Up close, the human was terrifying in ways he had not anticipated. She was not particularly large or obviously muscular, but she moved with the confidence of a predator, her eyes scanning the room constantly, assessing threats, planning responses. Those eyes were forward-facing like all hunting species, built to track prey. 12 wounded, Old Corthan said when Telex could not answer. 3 critical. Life support failing. Crash cutting through the eastern bulkhead. Sarah nodded once and started issuing orders in rapid human speech. Her crew dispersed immediately, moving through the station with purpose. 4 headed toward the wounded. 6 went to reinforce the eastern bulkhead. The rest began assessing the damage to life support systems. Marcus Webb, the massive engineer, approached the medical area where the wounded Vryn lay. Telex watched in amazement as the huge human knelt beside Mira, who had suffered a broken arm when a ceiling panel had fallen. Marcus's hands, large enough to crush a Vryn's skull without effort, touched her arm with surprising gentleness. "It's okay," Marcus said softly, his translator working. "We're going to get you fixed up." But Mira was crying, trembling with fear. To her, this giant was a monster made flesh. Marcus seemed to understand. He sat back, giving her space, and instead showed her his own arm, where a long scar ran from elbow to wrist. "Got that on my first ship," he said conversationally. "Cargo container fell during a gravity failure. Broke the bone clean through. Hurt like hell, but the doc put me back together. You're going to be fine." A scream echoed through the station. The crash had broken through the eastern bulkhead. Telex heard weapons fire, saw the flash of energy discharges. The 6 humans who had gone to defend that position were now fighting for their lives. Sarah was moving before Telex could react, drawing a heavy pistol from her suit and running toward the fight. The other humans followed, except for those staying with the wounded. Telex found himself running too, driven by curiosity and horror. What he saw would haunt him forever. The Kresh pirates were large creatures, heavily armored with thick exoskeletons and multiple limbs. They carried military-grade weapons and wore combat suits. There were at least 15 of them pouring through the breach. By any reasonable assessment, 6 humans should not have stood a chance, but humans were not reasonable. Telex watched as a human named Johnson rolled behind a support pillar, the Kresh weapons fire missing him by centimeters. While the pirates tracked his movement, another human popped up from a different position and fired 3 precise shots, dropping 2 Kresh before they could react. The humans did not stay still. They moved constantly, using cover aggressively, coordinating their fire without seeming to communicate. One Kresh got close, its clawed limbs reaching for a human's throat. The human, a woman named Torres, ducked under the attack with impossible speed and drove a powered pry bar into the Kresh's chest armor, activating the hydraulic function. The armor cracked like an egg, but what truly shocked Telex was what happened when the human medic, Jones, took a hit. The Kresh energy weapon struck him in the shoulder, burning through his suit. By all medical knowledge Telex possessed, that wound should have been immediately fatal. The heat alone should have sent the human into shock. Jones grunted, stumbled, caught himself, and kept fighting. He fired his weapon one-handed while his other arm hung useless at his side. Blood ran down his suit, but his face showed only anger, not pain or fear. "Someone want to get this guy?" Sarah shouted, firing around Jones to cover him while he retreated to cover. The Kresh, seeing wounded prey, pressed forward. It was a mistake. The humans became more aggressive, not less. They moved to protect their injured, and their fire became more concentrated, more deadly. 3 more Kresh fell in as many seconds. The pirates broke. They retreated back through the breach, leaving their dead behind. In the sudden silence, Telex realized he was shaking so hard his teeth chattered together. The humans checked their wounded first. Jones was being treated by Maria Santos, the ship's doctor, who cut away his burned suit and applied some kind of spray that hardened into a temporary seal. Jones was arguing with her. "It's not that bad, Doc. I can still fight." "You've got a 3rd-degree burn the size of my hand," Maria said flatly. "Sit down or I'll sedate you." Telex approached slowly, his hands held out in a gesture of peace. Sarah saw him and smiled. It was meant to be reassuring, but Telex could see her teeth. Flat incisors for grinding, but also sharp canines designed for tearing meat. Omnivore teeth. "Predator teeth, your people safe?" Sarah asked. Telex nodded, not trusting his voice. "Good," Sarah said. She touched her forehead and her hand came away red with blood. She looked at it with mild surprise. Didn't notice that. She had been injured too, Telex realized. A head wound bleeding freely, and she had not even noticed because she was too focused on protecting others. This was the nature of humans, he understood suddenly. They were dangerous, yes. Terrifying, absolutely. But they were dangerous in defense of others. They were terrifying in the service of protection. "Thank you," Telex finally managed to say. "Thank you for coming." Sarah's smile became more genuine, less frightening. "You needed help. What else would we do?" Telex did not have an answer for that. In his experience, most species would have calculated the risk, assessed the danger, and decided that 47 Vryn lives were not worth the cost. But humans had calculated differently, or perhaps they had not calculated at all. Perhaps they had simply seen people in danger and reacted with the instinct bred into them by their terrible, wonderful, impossible world. "The creche will come back," Telex said quietly. "With more ships." Sarah nodded, wiping blood from her eyes. "Yeah, probably. But we'll be ready. And this time you're going to help us." Telex stared at her. "Help you how?" "We're going to teach you how to fight back," Sarah said simply. "Come on, Doctor. Let's get to work." The medical bay of Kepler-7 station had become a strange place of cultural collision. Human medics worked alongside Vryn doctors, their methods so different that it sometimes seemed like they were practicing entirely different sciences. Maria Santos moved between the wounded with confident efficiency, while the Vryn medical staff watched in fascinated horror. "His body temperature is 40 degrees, one Vryn doctor said, staring at Jones, the wounded human. "He should be dying of fever." "That's normal for us," Maria said without looking up from her work. "Humans run hot. Helps us fight infections." The Vryn doctor looked like she might faint. 40 degrees would cook a Vryn alive from the inside out. Yet this human sat on the medical bed, arguing about when he could return to duty, acting as if having a hole burned through his shoulder was merely inconvenient. In another corner, Marcus was helping repair the life support systems. The Vryn engineers watched him work with the kind of attention usually reserved for watching explosives being diffused. Marcus had removed his suit, working in just his undershirt, and the Vryn could see the muscle structure that humans developed naturally in their high-gravity environment. What they could not see but could measure was that he was working in an environment that would slowly poison them, temperature and atmospheric pressure that were uncomfortable to him, but would be deadly to Vryn within hours. "Hand me that wrench," Marcus said to Corthan, pointing at a tool. Corthan tried to lift it and nearly fell over. The wrench was designed for human strength levels. It probably weighed as much as Corthan's entire arm. Marcus took it with one hand, casually, and began working on a bolt that had seized up. The bolt was designed to require mechanical assistance to remove. Marcus removed it with just his hands and the wrench, the muscles in his arms bunching with effort but not strain. "How are you so strong?" Corthan asked in wonder. Marcus paused, thinking about how to explain. "Where we come from, gravity pulls harder. Makes you either strong or dead. We're the ones who got strong." On the bridge, Sarah was going over defensive positions with Telex. Her head wound had been cleaned and sealed, but she had refused anything stronger than basic painkillers. She needed to think clearly, she had said. The creche would be back soon and they needed to be ready. "Here, here, and here," Sarah pointed at sections of the station. "These are your weakest points. The creche will try to breach them first. We'll position people with weapons at each location." "But we don't know how to fight," Telex protested. "We're scientists, not soldiers." "You're about to learn," Sarah said firmly. "Rodriguez." The first officer appeared carrying several cases of equipment. He opened them to reveal what humans called basic weapons, plasma cutters modified for combat use, magnetic accelerators, even simple projectile weapons that worked on chemical reactions. "These are simple enough that anyone can use them," Rodriguez explained. "Point the end with the hole at what you want to hit. Press this button. Try not to hit your friends." Young Mira approached hesitantly, her broken arm now splinted and supported. Despite her injury and her fear, there was something new in her eyes. Determination, maybe, or anger at the creche for attacking her home. "Can you teach me?" she asked quietly. Sarah looked at the young Vryn for a long moment, then nodded. "Yeah, come here." For the next several hours, humans taught Vryn the basics of combat. Not advanced tactics or complicated strategies, just simple things. How to use cover, how to retreat without panicking, how to work together to protect each other. The Vryn were clumsy and scared, but they tried. They tried because the humans made it clear that they were not giving up on them. During a break, Telex found himself alone with Sarah on an observation deck. They looked out at the stars together and at the debris field where the creche ships had retreated. "Why?" Telex asked quietly. Why did you come? You could have died. You still might die. We are nothing to you. Sarah was quiet for a moment, then she spoke. Do you know what Earth is like, Doctor? I've read the files. A death world, hostile, dangerous. That's true, Sarah agreed. But it's not the whole truth. Yes, Earth tries to kill you every day. High gravity that breaks your bones. Diseases that hunt for weakness. Weather that can freeze you or burn you or tear you apart with wind. Predators that see you as food. But you know what else Earth has? Telek shook his head. Beauty, Sarah said softly. Sunsets that paint the sky in colors you can't imagine. Oceans so vast you can't see the end. Mountains that touch the clouds. And people, Doctor. People who help each other, because that's how we survived. When the gravity tries to crush you, you help your neighbor stand up. When the disease comes, you share your medicine. When the predator attacks, you defend the tribe. She turned to look at him, and her eyes were not predatory now. They were just tired and sad and determined. We learned a long time ago that the universe is dangerous, she continued. But we also learned that we're stronger together. You sent a distress call. You asked for help. How could we not come? What kind of people would we be if we heard someone in danger and just kept flying? Telex felt something shift inside him. For the first time since the humans had arrived, he was not afraid of them. They were still terrifying, still dangerous, still capable of violence that made his blood run cold. But he understood them now. They were not monsters. They were protectors. The violence was just a tool, used in service of something better. The creche will return soon, Telex said. Our sensors detect a larger force assembling. 16 hours, maybe less. Then we have 16 hours to get ready, Sarah said simply. Come on, Doctor. Your people are doing better than you think. Mira's actually pretty good with that plasma cutter. They returned to the station proper, where humans and Vryn worked side by side. The cultural barrier was still there, but it was breaking down bit by bit. A Vryn engineer showed Marcus a faster way to reroute power. A human medic learned how to treat Vryn injuries from their doctors. Young Mira laughed at something Torres said, the sound surprising everyone, including herself. In the medical bay, Jones finally submitted to being sedated after Maria threatened to have Marcus sit on him. As he drifted off, he mumbled something about stubborn doctors and not missing the next fight. Maria just shook her head and smiled. The hours ticked past. The repairs continued. The weapons were distributed. The defensive positions were prepared. And when the creche returned, as they inevitably would, they would find something they did not expect. Vryn and humans together. Afraid but ready, weak but determined, facing the darkness side by side. Telex stood at his position, plasma cutter held in his shaking hands, and realized something important. The humans had not just come to save them. They had come to show them how to save themselves. And maybe, just maybe, that was an even greater gift. Here they come. Sarah's voice crackled over the communication system. Everyone remember your training. Stay calm, watch your fields of fire, and know that we're all in this together. Telex took a deep breath and prepared to fight for his station, his people, and his new understanding of what strength truly meant. Outside the viewport, the creche fleet appeared from slipstream space, their ships dark and hungry. But this time, the prey had teeth. The creche fleet came out of slipstream space like a swarm of metal insects, twice as many ships as before. 24 vessels, all armed for combat, all hungry for revenge. On the bridge of the lead ship, Commander Vrex stared at the damaged station and the small human cargo vessel still docked to it. Pathetic, he thought. They would crush this resistance in minutes. All ships prepare to fire, Vrex commanded. Target the human ship first, then we breach the station and take what we want. But before they could fire, something else appeared on their sensors. Big something. Coalition Dreadnought Big. A massive warship dropping out of slipstream space between the creche fleet and the station, its weapons already charging, its shields already raised. This is Admiral Krath of the Coalition 7th Fleet. A deep voice boomed across all channels. Creche vessels, you are in violation of 19 different galactic laws. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded, or we will open fire. Vrex felt his confidence evaporate. A coalition dreadnought was not something you fought with pirate ships. It was something you ran from. But before he could give the order to retreat, the humans made everything complicated. The indomitable spirit detached from the station and moved to form up alongside the coalition ship. It was absurd. The human, Cargo vessel was smaller than the Dreadnought's shuttle bay, but it positioned itself as a warship, weapons charged, clearly ready to fight. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the human vessel Indomitable Spirit," the rough voice said. "The people on that station are under our protection. You want them, you go through us." On Kepler 7 station, Telex listened to the exchange with amazement. The humans were not backing down. Even with coalition forces present, even with the danger past, they were still standing guard, still protecting. "All Kresh vessels, this is your final warning," Admiral Krath said, and there was steel in his voice now. "Surrender or be destroyed." The Kresh fleet began powering down weapons. They knew when they were beaten. But several ships tried to make a run for it, including Vrex's command ship. That was when things became interesting. The Coalition Dreadnought targeted the fleeing vessels with precision weapons, disabling their engines without destroying them. But one Kresh ship got through the initial barrage and accelerated toward slipstream entry. The Indomitable Spirit moved to intercept. What happened next would be studied by galactic military academies for years to come. The small human cargo vessel, already damaged from its previous combat, executed a series of maneuvers that should have been impossible for a ship its size. It intercepted the fleeing Kresh vessel, matched its speed, and used its magnetic grapples to physically latch onto the pirate ship. "You're not running." Sarah's voice was cold and hard. "You hurt people. You tried to kill innocents. You're going to face justice for that." The Kresh tried to shake the human ship loose, but the grapples held. Marcus had reinforced them personally, using materials and techniques that ignored standard safety margins. The two ships tumbled through space, locked together, until Coalition security forces arrived to take the Kresh crew into custody. 4 hours later, the battle was over. The Kresh were captured. The station was secure. Medical teams from the Coalition ship were treating the wounded, both Vryn and human. And Admiral Krath had boarded Kepler 7 to have a very serious conversation with Captain Sarah Chen. Krath was a Turian, a warrior species that had been fighting wars since before humans left their homeworld. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, covered in thick armor plating that was part of his biology. He had led fleets in dozens of battles. He did not scare easily, but something about Captain Chen made him uncomfortable. She was tiny by his standards, barely coming up to his chest. Her species was new to galactic society, still learning the rules. She had violated at least a dozen regulations by responding to the distress call, engaging in combat without authorization, and executing maneuvers that were flagged as too dangerous for civilian vessels. He had planned to charge her with everything he could think of. Then he had seen the Vryn survivors, seen them working alongside the humans, learning from them, no longer afraid. Seen young Mira trying to teach a human crew member a Vryn song. Seen old Corthan sharing a meal with Marcus, the two of them laughing at some joke. "Captain Chen," Krath said formally, "you violated protocol. You endangered your crew. You took risks that could have resulted in everyone dying." "Yes, sir," Sarah said simply. She did not argue or make excuses. "Why?" Krath asked, genuinely curious. "Why risk everything for strangers?" Sarah looked at him for a moment, then glanced around the station at her crew mixing with the Vryn. "Admiral, can I tell you about Earth?" And she did. She told him about a world that tried to kill its inhabitants every single day, about gravity that crushed bones and built them stronger, about diseases that killed millions and taught immune systems to fight back, about predators and prey and the thin line between them, about disasters that destroyed cities and people who rebuilt them anyway. "We learned something important on Earth," Sarah said quietly. "We learned that the universe doesn't care about you. Nature doesn't care if you live or die. The only thing that matters is the choices you make and the people you choose to protect. We heard a distress call from people who needed help. What else were we supposed to do?" Krath was silent for a long moment. Then Dr. Telex approached, his forearms making a formal gesture of respect. "Admiral Krath," Telex said, his voice stronger than it had been before. "I speak for all 47 members of this station. These humans saved us when no one else could. They fought for us. They bled for us. They taught us how to defend ourselves. Yes, They are Deathworlders. Yes, they are dangerous. But perhaps that is exactly what the galaxy needs. Perhaps we need protectors who are strong enough to stand between the innocent and the darkness. Krath looked between the small Vryn scientist and the human captain. He thought about all the reports he had read about humanity, about their violence, their aggression, their refusal to accept limitations. He had come here expecting to find a disaster, more evidence that humans were too dangerous to be part of galactic civilization. Instead, he found something else. He found humans who used their strength to protect the weak. He found a crew who risked everything for strangers. He found a captain who understood that power without purpose was just destruction, but power with purpose could save lives. Captain Chen, Krath said slowly, "You're right. You did violate protocol. So I'm going to recommend some changes to protocol. The Coalition has been looking for species willing to serve in emergency response roles. Situations where time is critical and normal procedures are too slow. We need people who can make the hard choices, take the necessary risks, and get to disasters before everyone dies." He paused, and if Turians could smile, he would have. "How would you and your crew like a new job?" Sarah blinked in surprise. "Sir?" "Emergency response specialists," Krath said. "You'll have authority to respond to distress calls, official backing for your operations, and proper equipment. You'll also have oversight to make sure you don't get yourselves killed doing something stupid, though based on what I've seen, that might be a losing battle." Sarah looked at her crew. They were battered and tired, bruised and burned, but every single one of them was grinning. Rodriguez gave her a thumbs up. Marcus nodded enthusiastically. Even Jones, still heavily sedated, managed a weak fist pump from his medical bed. "We accept," Sarah said. "Thank you, Admiral." 6 months later, the indomitable Spirit arrived at another disaster. A colony ship had suffered catastrophic drive failure and was tumbling toward a star. Coalition ships were 4 days away. The crew had maybe 8 hours of life support left. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the emergency response vessel Indomitable Spirit." Sarah's voice crackled across space. "We're 3 hours out, hold on. Help is coming." In the colony ship, people heard that rough, determined voice and felt hope kindle in their hearts. Because they knew about the Deathworlders now. The whole galaxy knew. They were the ones who came when no one else could. The ones who stood between danger and the innocent. The ones who had learned strength from a cruel world and chosen to use it for protection. On Earth, the species that had been feared and isolated for so long now found itself with a new purpose. Applications for Coalition emergency response flooded in. Humans, it seemed, were very good at running toward danger instead of away from it. It was what their world had taught them. It was what they were. Dr. Telix, now serving as an advisor to the Coalition on Human Integration, watched another emergency response team deploy and felt satisfaction. The Vryn no longer feared humans. They understood them, and understanding had led to something no one expected: friendship. Young Mira, now training as an emergency responder herself under human instructors, prepared for her first mission. She was still scared, but she had learned from the best that being scared did not mean being helpless. It just meant you had to be brave. In the dark spaces between stars, in the moments when disaster struck and hope seemed lost, people no longer prayed to gods they were not sure existed. Instead, they sent distress calls and waited for the rough voices to answer. "Help is coming. Hold on." And the Deathworlders, the ones from the impossible world, the ones who had learned to turn danger into strength and violence into protection, came running, because that was what they did. That was who they were. That was humanity.